they will know Helghan belongs to the Helghast.
Welcome back, Helldivers 2025. Now, today we're making a Killzone Helghast build. And I thought this would be pretty simple and straightforward, but it actually turns out to be a little bit more complicated than I anticipated. Now, I've got my copy of Killzone 2 right here, so I decided to spin it up, and maybe we'll talk a little bit about that at the State of the Galaxy, but just know we could make essentially multiple builds, multiple videos just based on the Killzone franchise, but I'm gonna kind of condense that and try to just make two variations of it, and we're gonna talk about both those variations in this video. So how this is gonna work is we're gonna go through the equipment, the armor, and then the first stratagem weapon, and that'll be variant number 1. And then we're going to wheel back to the equipment again, and we're going to make the second variation picks. And again, we're going to stop at the stratagem weapon. And then from there, we'll talk about the remaining stratagem picks that I think are appropriate for the Helghast in the Killzone franchise. And then once we make all the picks and kind of the options that are at your disposal, we'll kind of go through like an overview of like what this build's like good at, maybe some weak areas for it, and just general thoughts. So if this sounds like something you're interested in, strap in, get your Liberty. My wife got me this for Christmas. That's a W for the wife. And yeah, let's jump into the variation number 1. So for the variation number 1, it's kind of going to be the more, I would say, conventional weapons, maybe like the frontline kind of trench Helghast trooper here. We're going with the Stahl assault rifle and the Stahl SMG as your main primary weapon. You can interchange these two because the assault rifle variant costs like 615 super credits on the superstore, and that's on rotation, so not everybody might even have this thing. It's not amazing. It's kind of like middle of the pack assault rifle, and that goes basically for the same for the SMG as well. The Stahl 11 SMG, everybody has this, everybody got it for free. Again, it's kind of just a middle of the pack SMG. Both of them have like a higher rate of fire, so you're going to need to tap the trigger a little bit unless you want to be reloading all the time, but they're both solid picks. And then moving to the secondary category, I think the Peacemaker works just fine, so does the Verdict. But the real standout here would be the Senator. I think this is what would make this this part of the kit really more well-rounded, is because we're going to be lacking a little bit on that heavy department. And the Senator, oh man, it is just so freaking good. In Killzone, the ISA, they all come with revolvers, so the Senator, I think, is an appropriate pick here. And then for the grenade category, I think the regular impact, the incendiary impact, and then the gas grenade, those three grenades are, I would say, very appropriate, very well-rounded grenades overall. And then for the armor for both of these variations that we're going to talk about, we're going with the Helghast armor. There is the medium armor that's on the superstore, but again, if you're willing to spend the super credits, sure. But we also have the obedient version, which is the light variant, and these both come with that acclaimed passive ability, which is 50% damage resistance to fire, gas, acid, and arc electricity. So it's a really good armor set. And then booster wise, boosters always just come down to essentially what does your squad need, what is not already filled in. You know, there's like maybe 5-6 boosters that are good, so those are kind of just, you know, fill in as necessary. And then the stratagem weapon we're going for, before we start talking about the second variation, the stratagem weapon we're going to pick here is the Wasp. The Wasp is it's really good. It does an excellent job at just clearing the field of all those medium targets and even some of the heavy targets as well. Definitely more of a like middle of the pack, destroys everything. Can't target things like voteless, but this thing still does an excellent job again on the bot front and the bug front, and we'll talk about more of the kind of like the play styles with each faction in the overview section. But just know for this variation, we're going with the Wasp. Now let's move on to the Accelerator. That is the sniper category. That's going to be the primary pick for the second variation here. Now admittedly, the Accelerator, it's not everybody's cup of tea because it has those three round burst shots before you need to change out the cartridge. That feels pretty bad, but don't worry, we're going to compensate for that a little bit later. And so moving on to the secondary, I would again take almost like the same secondaries that we were talking about in the first variation. I think those all work pretty well. Maybe lean on the side of more of the light chaff clear, so the Peacemaker or the Verdict. Also, the Redeemer's not a bad pick. There are SMGs, like different SMGs in Killzone, namely Killzone 3. Killzone 2, I think, just has the one SMG, the Helghast one. But just know the Redeemer still a solid choice as well. And then for the grenade slots, same as before, same as we talked about with the first variation. Obviously, armor-wise, yep, same there too. Booster, same. Just pick in what you need to fill in. Now, the stratagem weapon, on the other hand, we're going with the arc thrower. Thank God, right? The arc thrower is excellent at taking out chaff and even heavy targets, and even targets that it doesn't take out, say, immediately. It can stun lock them to then kill them. Because yes, in Killzone there is an arc launcher. Now, admittedly, I think the variation that we have in Helldivers 2 is actually a little bit better, just because of how many targets it bounces between, and how many targets we have. I don't know if it's actually a good idea to be comparing games, because it's like apples to oranges essentially. But yes, the pick we're going with here is the arc thrower. Now, the arc thrower does free up our backpack slot. And in Killzone, in the multiplayer, you get, I think it's the tactician class. They can throw down a little drone buddy that'll come with you. So to pair, we're going to pair the one of the guard dogs, any of the guard dogs that you want. Obviously, the rover and the regular guard dog are, I would say, the more universal picks here. So I would pick one of those to fill in your backpack slot. So you have right now with the variation 2 here, we have a lot of basically normal chaff and even heavy targets covered just with our kit. Because with the accelerator, you are going to be able to pick off targets at a long range, and then something like a charger's backside, this thing does a really good job at destroying really quickly, and then it also can snipe out Bile Titan like sacks as well. So the accelerator is not horrible, but if it's not really your cup of tea, well, the arc thrower, man, this thing is just, you kind of forget how good the arc thrower is until you're using it. So just know that this second variation, maybe on paper you might be like, but this just, don't worry, it works out. So now let's talk about the rest of the stratagem picks. Obviously, variation 1, call it that, the assault one. We have 3 choices to kind of fill out the rest of the stratagem picks. The second option, variation 2, the one with the accelerator and the sniper, we only have 2 choices because I'm throwing in the backpack with the arc thrower, so that takes up 2 slots already. Now, looking at Killzone, especially in the multiplayer side, there is a demolition, there is a sentry class. So picking a sentry, I think, is pretty appropriate for this build. So whatever sentry you want to pick is kind of up to you. I think it would depend on the factions. For example, like the automatons, I think the auto cannon sentry is really good against them. But on the bug side, the Gatling and the machine gun, those are pretty solid. Same thing against the squid, the machine gun and the Gatling are it's really strong against those. But honestly, something like the mortar, not a bad choice as well for a little bit of artillery. And then hell, if you wanted to throw in 2 sentries and throw in the rocket sentry as well to make sure you take out those massive targets or have an option for them, hey, that's not a bad pick either. So just know, yeah, sentries, they're on the table, baby. And next up, we'll talk a little bit about Eagle airstrikes. Admittedly, they don't have, or yes, there's not many instances where you actually see too much, I would say, like Eagle or like Jet, like a support. But they do have, on the Helghast side, they have like this like hunter-killer drone kind of like thing. That shoots at you. So maybe the strafe and run, if you wanna like bend it a little bit, maybe I could see that one working, but kind of gonna stay away from the Eagles for this build. So another option to consider is the fact that the Helghasts have their regular cruisers and then they have arc cruisers. Surprisingly, these things look a lot like our ships. But anyways, so I think any of the kind of the orbitals actually work here. I think the precision strike's not a bad choice. Gas, I don't know if gas necessarily works. But any of the barrages, I think, fits pretty well. And then the orbital laser, I think this one's like this one's like an all-rounder. It's great against all the factions. So maybe one of these orbitals, put that in there. And then for your last pick, well, in Killzone 3, Guerrilla Studios, they kind of start to show their hand towards their, I would say, how much they like robots and stuff. So we have our exosuits. I think that's perfectly fitting for a last slot or an option if you want to put that in there. And that kind of like is a good option for, I guess, when shit hits the fan, or again, you need something for massive targets or just a shit ton of chaff that's coming up. So either of the exosuits work here. Exosuits are really good still, guys. It's just they're not everybody's cup of tea. So now let's go over to the overview section where we can talk about both of these variations and kind of my picks I would make against each of the respective factions. So overview for the first variation here. This is the assault rifle or the SMG. We have everything covered as far as chaff with our primary weapon, and then our secondary. If you're taking the Senator, those heavier targets, yeah, it takes a little bit longer, but you can take them out. You can take out everything with the Senator essentially. Grenades, they do a good job at the grenades that we're picking here. Do a good job again at helping you do a little bit of crowd control, especially if you're using gas or the fire. And then obviously, yeah, our grenades, they will be what we can use to say club fabricators, destroy warp ships, bug holes, stuff like that. Each one of those grenades does destroy those things if you're in a pinch or you have time to get up close. And then yeah, for the Wasp is excellent versus the bugs and the bots. It does an absolute banger of a job, just like, again, leveling the playing field versus those targets and how much range you have on them, because versus the squids, it's still good. It's just, you know, with those streets and the buildings, there's a lot more in your way of like your field of view and like the, you know, how far off you can see as far as range. But with the bugs and the bots, those missions tend to be more open fields. You can see a lot longer distance, and this Wasp does a really excellent job at just basically sniping them in like an artillery like fashion. Now, admittedly, I like to keep the Wasp in the burst fire mode. I think you get a lot of more bang for your buck, but the artillery mode, yeah, that can work too, especially if like a group gets summoned in, like a warp ship that gets summoned in. That's a good time to hit that pack there with an artillery, or if a bug breach comes up, same thing there. And also, you can fire off like 3-4 rockets and have like, you know, not a full like cartridge, and then you can switch it to the all fire mode and then shoot the rest of that in artillery mode. It doesn't have to be a full clip for the Wasp. But already with this first variation, I think it already does an excellent job versus the bots and the bugs. Squid wise, again, the only thing this thing would maybe struggle against is the harvester, but you can just lay on the trigger with this and it'll do its job. So with this variation number 1, I would actually probably take, again, like that auto cannon sentry versus the bots, and then a barrage as well to kind of soften up their bases, because obviously, yeah, their fortifications are a little bit heavier than the other two factions. And then that last pick can kind of be up to you. You kind of already have everything else covered. Maybe pick something like a precision strike or the rocket sentry to help out with factory striders. But other than that, you're good to go against the bots. Now on the bug front, it's kind of a similar story. I would again take instead of the auto cannon sentry, I would just take the machine gun or the sentry. But everything else, you have it covered. Maybe Bile Titans would be a little bit of a struggle. So maybe take again, same thing, precision strike, rocket sentry. I didn't find myself using many stratagems at all, because the initial kit here plus the Wasps it does such a good job at everything. So not gonna struggle with this one against the bugs. And yeah, and against the squids, as long as you're careful about your positioning, the Wasp can do a lot of work there as well. But you do have your SMG, you do have your secondary and your grenades to help control like those streets and those you know, those bottlenecks as well versus the vote list. So it does a really good job. Like your initial kit, not just without the Wasp, does already a really good job against like voteless swarms. And then overseers, obviously, they're not really. I think the Wasp was like specifically made to just snipe those suckers. So again, you're already covered there. The squids kind of swarm, kind of like bugs do. So like they're somewhere in the middle. So again, those same picks for the bugs, I would make with the squids as well. And for variation number 2 here, so this is like the sniper accelerator variation versus the bots. What would the choices I would make? Well, first off, with the accelerator sniper rifle, this thing's really good against the bots, actually, just because of the range that you get. And I mean, you're going to be reloading a lot with it if you decide to stick with it, but just know there's a lot of situations where you are going to be using this sniper rifle. And then when you're not using the sniper rifle, well, the arc thrower and then pairing that with a guard dog, anything chaff, anything that's close in front of you. Well, first off, you lock them down with the arc thrower, so they're not doing anything anyways. And then the arc thrower, the range on it is actually insane. I forgot how far this thing will shoot. So the entire automaton front is basically just not equipped to deal with the arc thrower and just the initial kit here. Now with the arc thrower, you do have to be careful not to have your lightning basically jump to your own teammates, a little friendly fire. But you know what, if your friends get in the way, that's kind of their fault, isn't it? But maybe for this variation, as far as the sentry, maybe go with one of the mortars, or again, the autocannon is also a great pick here. But you're going to have a lot of time where you're just sitting there just throwing arc bolt after arc bolt. So having that artillery fire with a mortar, not a bad choice. And then I guess, yeah, same pick here. I would go with one of the barrages as well. Kind of would just do probably the same picks for that we made with the first variation for the second variation, because both of those kits, while they are different, the variations they are different, they overall, when you look at what they're good at, they both cover the same field. So actually you just probably make the same picks for the bugs and the squids as well that we just mentioned in the first variation. And really overall, when it comes to these two, I actually prefer the second variation, so the sniper variation versus the bots. I actually like the accelerator versus the bots, but against the squids and the bugs, I like the assault rifle, the SMG variation a little bit better. More of that, you know, close quarters, just really in the thick of things. I think the first variation is really meant for that. But with the second variation, you have a lot more distance and you're a lot more in control. So that's why I think it's good against the bots, because the bots, I still think the bots are most annoying to fight for me still. There's just so much shit they're just shooting at you all the time. But the arc thrower really locks them down, and then anything you can use to basically support the arc thrower is just going to make that kit even better. So just on the final thoughts with these two variations, the only thing that this kit really, or either one of these variations maybe is a little bit weaker in, is that massive killing those factory striders and those bile titans, because obviously any of the rockets like the recoilless rifle, yeah, they can just one tap bile titans, you know, a couple taps against a factory strider and they're down. We don't really have an option for that, so that's why you want to make sure that those options that you have in the stratagem category, you use to cover those heavier or those massive targets, because again, your base kit should cover everything from chaff to heavy. So that's the build. Let me know how you guys would make basically a Killzone, a Helghast build. And I should have made an honorable mention to the Arc Blitzer, because again, in Killzone they have an arc weapon, but I already knew we were going to cover that arc weapon as the arc thrower. But just know, yes, the Arc Blitzer kind of works too as well. And like I said at the beginning of the video, this got a little bit more complicated, because again, a lot of the weapons that are in Killzone 2 and 3 are already in Helldivers 2. Killzone, they basically have a bushwhacker as well. They have a grenade pistol. They obviously have a grenade launcher, machine guns, rocket launchers. So there's a lot of things in Killzone that you could actually just bring into Helldivers 2, as far as like if you want to make it like a specific build, or you can just make a build off of every one of the classes that is in the multiplayer. So that's an option as well. So if people really want that, I would consider it. But I think it's like the two variations I did here were different enough. They're definitely different play styles. And then they cover obviously the weapons that we got from the crossover. So I feel like we can move on over to the state of the galaxy now. So for the state of the galaxy, not much really to report on the game front, but I did want to talk a little bit about Killzone 2. Now I popped this back in. The graphics in this game actually hold up really well. This game looks better than some PS3, maybe PS5 games. Now, obviously, if you look down into like the nitty-gritty detail, yeah, maybe it's not that great, but the art style and the aesthetic that they went for in Killzone 2, chef's kiss. Now, where the game kind of falls off is how it plays. Really sluggish, really slow, does not control very well. They kind of fix and address this in Killzone 3. I don't know where my copy of that is, but just know in Killzone 2, if you decide to come back to it, yeah, it's a little bit of an adjustment period on like how it plays. It's a little bit rough. And why we have never gotten a remaster or a remake of Killzone 2 or 3, I don't know. They're too busy remastering The Last of Us Part 2 again. So it's different studios. That doesn't really apply. And yeah, I even just took a quick look on the Reddit, and really it's just par for the course things going on there. Nothing really, I would say, that exciting to talk about. Maybe talk a little bit about the recon vehicle, or basically our Warthog. That heavy machine gun needs a little bit of addressing. It's not the easiest thing to use, and I feel like they need to up the ammo, especially on the vehicle version, because I do feel like we're really missing out on that Warthog fantasy when the heavy machine gun is just, maybe change it out with the regular machine gun. I don't know. It's just, it doesn't control very well overall. That's really all I got. Really, you know what? This video was already long enough because I had to go over essentially almost like 2 different builds. So that's it. That's all the video. I will catch you guys next time. Peace and take care.